Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back with another episode, and you are in for a treat today because I'm in for a treat. I have fellow UT grad Michael Edenbaum. Michael, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Michael, I started a podcast around movies last fall, and the journey for me has been extraordinary to listen to people like yourself talk about the creative process. I have a podcast with artists, I have a podcast with authors, I've done a movie series with a film producer, and I'm really intrigued by the creative process of an actor. So I hope we get to explore that with you and really talk about your work and your own process with that incredibly long-winded introduction. First of all, welcome again. And could you give us a brief overview of your career, some of the key projects, and then the Acclaimed Talent Agency?
Yeah, it started back 1,000 years ago. I saw a movie with Paul Newman and Robert Redford called Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That was my moment. That's when my soul woke up and said, you know what? That's what I want to do. But it was like saying, I want to be an astronaut. It's just how realistic is that? I got into a movie early on in the 80s and I got to work with Sidney Pollack's sister, Sharon. And it wasn't in the movie. So I was working in a sales position, but she happened to be part of the production in the studio that I was working at. So I got to know a little bit about the background of what a real actor does. And Redford and Newman were my heroes. I wanted to be Robert Redford when I was a kid. And Sid Pollock directed Redford in a few things, as well as Dustin Hoffman. So that's about as close as I got. Fast forward to about a year and 9 months ago. And I was out with a friend, and she said, wherever you go, people say, you know who you look like? And she said, why don't you make money off that? And I said, okay, how do I do that? She said, well, first get an agent. So I got an agent the next week, Acclaimed Talent Agency here in Austin. And within about a week or two after that, I got my first coffee commercial. And that was the beginning of my acting career full time. Up to this point, in a year and 9 or 10 months, I've been cast in 18 movies. Actually, as of 2 days ago, it looks like it might be 19, as well as 7 or 8 different series. So I have been on this rocket ship. I don't understand how fast it's happening. I lost my mom about 9 years ago. I think she's pulling some strings for me, but I am just enjoying the ride. And I hope I never lose this little kid feeling. When I'm on set, I'm just in heaven. And I cannot believe I get to do this.
So I think any listener to this podcast will recognize Austin for its vibrant music scene. They may not be as familiar with the film scene. Can you talk about kind of the scene in Austin, the group of actors you're around or with, or really just the film scene?
Yeah, it's interesting because my background before I got into acting full time, I was a national sales manager, director of sales rather, for a company that provided music to bars, restaurants, hotels. So I was in the music world. My brother-in-law used to run KLBJ, the rock station here in Austin. So there's always been music in my background. My grandfather played with Bob Hope. He played in the Fort Worth Symphony. But the acting community has really just blown up in Austin. We've got 3 or 4 major studios, and they're expanding all the time. And honestly, I joined this organization, AEB, Austin Entertainment Business, also known as All Entertainment Business. And through that organization that I joined about a year and 9 months or 10 months ago, I have been able to meet the top directors, producers, actors. It's been an organization run by Jennifer Hutchins, who's produced over 250 shows. And a lot of Hollywood in California is moving to Texas and especially Austin. They're kind of sick of the attitude that Hollywood has. Austin has such a vibrant film community, and the people are just, I always do the comparison. You ever been to a karaoke bar? No matter how bad you are, they just kind of cheer you on. That's kind of the Austin community, that it is competitive, but it's not like LA, and everybody is helping each other. And I've made some absolutely amazing friends. I have had opportunities that I would have never imagined. I got to meet James Cameron's the guy that does his biography, and so many amazing people. And that first meeting I went to, the guy that ran the MTV, what are the series, the reality show series that they do on MTV, he did all of those. And I was walking out, I was nervous because this was kind of my first shot at being an actor. And he stopped me and he said, "You know what? You've got the look. You ought to really pursue this." And that was that springboard moment where it's, you know what, maybe I do have a chance at this. And Austin has just been a wonderful community. You asked me a question, Tom, I could go on for 2 hours telling you how much I love this community, how much I love acting, and the opportunities that I've had. Austin is a great place to be, as well as Dallas. I have filmed in Dallas, Houston, Austin, but the entire Texas film community is just absolutely blowing up.
Could you just go through sort of the arc of your professional career? Because every actor I've looked at, they start very small. The parts get a little bigger, the parts get a little better, and the trajectory goes up. Is that your experience?
Absolutely, you are in fact, I was having this conversation with my dad, a buddy of mine who was a musician in LA when I first started, I got my first coffee commercial. He said, "I knew a lot of actors in LA, and their career was like this. You struggle, and then bam, there isn't really a ramp. It's like a rocket ship that comes out of nowhere." And I thought, well, that's probably true with some, but turns out that's how it was with me. It's a snowball. The more you get, the more you get. And, but I also will say, because of my sales background, I know how to promote. I know how to sell the product, and I am the product. I know I've run into a lot of actors that really, they're great actors, but they do not know how to promote themselves. They don't know how to network. I have met people I'm a producer as well as an actor, and I've met people sitting at one of my favorite places, Perry's. It's kind of my Cheers on a Friday night. And I've met people that when you talk about what do you do, if I said I was an accountant, it'd be a pretty short conversation. But when you say you're an actor and producer, people really love to hear about it. And I have made so many connections on funding series and movies and that sort of thing. And I'll talk to you later about it. But the movie that I'm most proud about, I met a guy that has a global company standing in line at this country western bar. And now I might get a multi-million dollar funding for the movie just based on a relationship. And I happen to talk about what I do and how much I love it. So you've got to network wherever you go because you just never know when that moment will happen.
I've talked to several actors who began acting as far back as junior high, or I guess middle school now. High school, they may have acted in college. They were on stage in college or in high school, and they talk about the transition to film. That's not your background. It doesn't
That's
sound
really
like.
I was an actor in my own head.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I'd watch The Twilight Zone. That was one of my favorite shows. And incidentally, I'm in a series that is filmed as if it's in the 1960s in black and white called Zero World. And I used to remember dialogue. And I would look at a movie and wonder why the camera angle was a certain way and why the lighting was a certain way. I would watch movies in a very different way than most little kids did. So it was like my soul was telling me, this is what you were meant to be, but I didn't have the spine or the guts to really take a shot at it because how many actors really are successful? And this is what I tell everybody, no matter how unrealistic you think your dream is, give it a shot because you absolutely never know. Maybe that was your trajectory. Maybe that's where you were supposed to be. And one of my favorite sayings is when you finally find out what you're supposed to do, the universe conspires to assist you. And boy, it's been a green light after green light with me. I have a perfect example of just this shouldn't be happening, but it is. And I'm going to enjoy the hell out of this ride. And I love it every single day.
My phrase might be a little bit different than that, but let's see. I say when the universe closes a door, it opens another. You have to have the courage to walk through that.
Absolutely.
And that part 2 is what took me 50 plus years to figure out. I knew part 1,
Yeah.
but you gotta have the courage to walk through it, and you just said that.
And that's interesting because I try to do something a little bit scary at least every other day because that's how you grow. I think it was George Clooney who says success teaches you absolutely nothing. Failure is where you learn. And I was a shy kid. I couldn't get a girl to look at me. My looks changed a little bit when I was in UT, and then I finally was able to get a date. But here's a shy kid that was afraid to be in front of anybody talking. And look what I'm doing. I'm standing with a crew of 30 or 40 people, 4 or 5 cameras, a boom man, and everybody's staring at me. It should be my biggest fear in life, but I have walked through that door, Tom, and now it's like, I cannot believe I'm doing what I was most afraid of. And I think that's how you grow as a person, not just as an actor.
So, what have been sort of either your favorite roles or favorite projects to date?
That's a great question, and it changes depending on the time of day you ask me that question. There's a movie coming up, and I've got a meeting with a potential investor on Friday. It's the closest to my soul. It takes place during the Holocaust, and it's a true story. It's about a father who has to tell his son, he lives in Austria, and he has to send his son to America right when the Nazis are invading. My family, part of my family, was in the Holocaust. I'm Jewish, and it really touched my soul. Schindler's List was one of those movies where I could barely stand up in the theater after I saw it. And I have a lead role. I play the father. I had to master an Austrian accent for the role. The trailer is out. If you go to my IMDb, the trailer comes up automatically. Again, it's called Stairway. And it is so powerful. It will probably be the most powerful movie I ever do. When we get the funding, we're going to shoot part of it in Austria and then the rest in Texas. And it is just, I have such emotional scenes. The subject matter is just, it's humanity's worst moment, but there's beauty within those moments. And this film is just absolutely incredible. I could not be more proud. We're probably going to go to a few of the concentration camps in Poland, maybe film part of it there. But it is just, it's such an emotional journey. And they let me go off script for one scene, and I kind of lost my soul. I truly, I know this sounds a little bit out there, but I almost felt like I was there in a past life. It was so personal, and I've been to every Holocaust museum, New York, Washington. So I am beyond proud of that film. That would probably be on top. Some fun stuff that I've just been I talk about. Sometimes I literally stay up at night thinking this can't be real. I was in a film recently with an Academy Award nominated actor, Eric Roberts. And if you've ever seen The Pope of Greenwich Village, I was one of those movies where, oh my God, this guy is acting on a different level. And here I am on set right next to him. It's like you have these out of body experiences. And Burke Floyd, who was in Gilmore Girls and a bunch of series, I consider him a friend now. So that movie is called Towpath. I'm in another movie called Dubby's Promise, which is about to come out. True story about Dubby Roundtree, who was a civil rights attorney in 1964, who went up against the Department of Justice and won. A black woman in 1965 against the DOJ and won. It's a true story. And I'm in two movies about the same lady. And one of the movies, I'm a DOJ prosecutor, Dubby's Promise. And on the other movie, I'm a reporter, the Eric Roberts movies. Very proud of both of those. I also got to meet Donzale Abernathy, who is a civil rights activist, and she's a goddaughter of Martin Luther King. She was in the film with me as well. And just met so many incredible people. And everywhere I go on these films, I ask, what's your trick? How do you memorize? How do you get into an emotional scene where you want to cry? And then Zero World, a kid who was a fan of Twilight Zone and Lost in Space. And if you've ever been a fan of Star Wars, this is all three of those put together into one series. And I'm going to be looking for funding on that very shortly, but we've already got over 100 episodes written, 5 feature films. It's an anthology. And again, if you watch it, you literally think it's like Rod Serling filming in 1960. It's just such a cool original concept. And Tom, there's a couple of projects I can't really talk about because I'm signed to an NDA, but I'm going to be in a sitcom and try out my comedy chops. That's going to be coming up fairly soon. And it looks like it's going to be a major hit. So looking forward to that and a bunch of other stuff. But those are the ones that come to my mind off the top.
Michael, I'd like to ask you about your creative process. What do you do either emotionally inside your head or any other way to get ready to play a character? You've talked about the range of projects you're going to be involved with, and that's why I was intrigued by your potential comedy project, which would give you perhaps a different outlet for a different set of acting chops. But what's your creative process?
I try to. live by the fact when I'm in a role, don't act. Be that person. If you find yourself, okay, I want to act angry. No, okay, then you're not there. You've got to be angry. You've got to feel as if, what if I was in a road rage incident where this is actually happening? There was a series that hadn't started filming yet, and I was in a actual situation at a HEB gas station where this really rude guy was yelling at an elderly lady, and as he was yelling, I'm picturing in my mind what I really wanted to do. And I'm a wolf man in this series. And I picture going up and grabbing his hand, biting his finger off, and saying, "That doesn't taste like chicken." And they actually wrote it into the script. So I try to become, I guess you could in some way say method actor, but I'm not really a method actor. Like in Stairway, when I had that scene, picturing, I'm telling my little boy that if you stay, you will die. And what would that feel like? And I'm picturing my father saying that to me, and all of this emotion just came forward. And I had to just kind of roll with it. And I couldn't snap out of it for 5 or 10 minutes because I wasn't acting. I was actually that character. So I try to do that. And I practice when I'm watching movies. I will literally look at myself in a mirror and say, what if I said that line? How would I do it differently? So I'm constantly acting every day, practicing my expressions, my reactions, and what it would look like on camera. Because sometimes when you have a feeling of what it look like and you look at yourself actually in a mirror, it's not what you're trying to project. So you got to practice these different emotions, facial emotions on in front of the mirror. And so until you master, okay, when I want to look this way, I know what I need to do, muscle memory in my face. But I try, I guess to simplify it, I try not to act. I try to be, if that makes sense.
Let me change the focus just a little bit to you talked about the words that you were told going into one of your first interviews and how much that inspired you. Are you able to pay it forward or send the elevator back down or really give those words of encouragement to others? Because one of the things I'm really conscious of, and I'm a little bit older than you, is helping out those coming up as well.
I wasn't expecting you to ask that question. I like that. That is kind of where my karma, I believe, is coming from. My father and mother kind of they put that in my soul, in our whole family, that you help others. My mother and father were into civil rights back in 1960 when it was not really popular in Texas. And that's where I came from. I think that it's a responsibility to help others. The more you do, the more you get back. I don't do it to get back because I think if that's your purpose, you're kind of doing it under false pretense. But I do that as much as I can. I even have acting friends that have been in this business. One lady that really I consider my acting teacher, and she was the location manager for Terminator 2 and Maverick with Mel Gibson and Jodie Foster. And every time I get a role, I tell her, if I have a way of getting you in this, I'm going to. The friends that I've met, I was a Texas Ranger on the series Walker, and I met a bunch of friends, lifelong friends that I'm friends with now. And even if I can get them into a background role, I feel a responsibility because they have done so many things for me as far as advice and who to talk to and all of that. So I absolutely live by that. I think it is something I must do. And honestly, I think that's why I'm having so much success. Anybody that I can help, I feel so good about that. It's just, you can't really understand it till you do it. So I live by that every day.
You talked about this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to explore just for a few moments marketing of Michael or Michael's media company or the role you play to help market it. And you're really the first actor I've talked to who came out of a sales background. So you understand that and you did it your professional career. Could you say a few more words about that?
Yeah, another great question. I think what I try to do, and this was a advice a director out of Dallas, a guy named Lance Larson gave me. He says, if you're going to do something, don't ask for anything back. If you're going to want to work on a movie, maybe go up to the director or somebody that you are able to meet and say, look, I just want to be part of the production. The word is help. How can I help? And he said, if you're going to be the guy that brings coffee, make sure it's the best coffee they've ever had. and it will make an impression on the people that you work around. Every actor wants that big role, wants that big movie. But I think if you go into it like you truly want to help the production, the director, the producer, the casting director, then they remember that because it's not real common, Tom. A lot of people, and it's just human nature, you try to do what you can for yourself. So when I market myself, I try to do it where how can I help this person that I'm talking to? And even if it's somebody that just when you're an actor, people are interested and they ask a lot of questions like what's it like and how do you memorize all of this? But I always try to turn it around. Tell me about you. What do you do? Because I learn from every relationship that I've met. Sometimes I just learn as a person. Sometimes I learn I can take this person's character and turn it into my future role that I might have. But as far as marketing, I network wherever I am. If it's a grocery store, if it's a restaurant, if it's a friend, I ask them what they do. I ask them all about themselves. And human nature, they will ask the question back, what do I do? And I do that wherever I am. And I've had many actors say, well, if they want me in the role, they'll tell me. I'm one of those people because of the sales background. And I know this may not be something casting directors want to hear, but if I'll send an audition in, I'll first of all I'll send a thank you note for the opportunity. Then I'll follow up in a week or two. Hey, I know you're busy and I may never hear back, but I just want to thank you for the opportunity. Have any casting decisions been made? And by the way, if I'm not right for this role, I definitely would be open to other roles. And then one thing I do, Tom, I'll toot my own horn. On that email, I'll say, by the way, in the last 1 year and 9 months, I've been cast in 18 films and 9 different series. And I'm not saying it to brag, I'm saying it as a stamp of credibility. Okay, this guy clearly has something going for himself. And I don't know many actors that do that. It's not bragging, it's just telling them what you're capable of. And I think that's a missing ingredient in so many people that are trying to get a role.
Michael, unfortunately, we are near the end of our episode for this, our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if our listeners wanted to connect with you, follow you on social media, or get any more information about any of our topics, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
I guess the top 3 would be go to my IMDb page, Michael Edenbaum. If you go to IMDb, just go to the search bar and type in my name, you'll see me. You can find me on Facebook, Michael Edenbaum, or Instagram, M as in Michael, M Edenbaum on Instagram. And if you're interested in possibly supporting or funding any of these projects, get in touch with me and I can set up a meeting with the other producers. But I just want to tell everybody how much I appreciate the people that love movies and love series because entertainment is great for the human spirit. And I am just so fortunate to be a part of it.
Michael, I wanted to thank you, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
I would love that. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate it.